I've been forgetting to because I'd just really rather have a conversation and not worry about that, but that's fine. I just set that. Couple things. I'm gonna look at the class real quick, and it looks like to me, I'm gonna go to the main page. All right, so there are 22 social observations that are turned in. Now, you don't need to reply to other people necessarily, and your observation is just a few paragraphs long. You could observe people through like a cam somewhere, I'm sure. Like they got a Denver Zoo cam. I mean, you could technically now watch people from just about anywhere. But those are due tomorrow, by tomorrow night at midnight, and there's only 22 turned in for 100 and some folks in this class, so get on top of that. This is the end of week 2, so by now, because at the end of next week, I believe that is when the next Friday on the 11th, that's when the first content assignment is due over chapters 1, 2, and 3. So by now, hopefully you are in the middle of your like chapter 2 or wrapping up chapter 2. Then next week you're getting to chapter 3 early so that you can, right now you can already write the essays, the ones that cover chapter 1 if you've done that in 2. That's just pacing wise. And then by tonight, you need your first Chicken People post. Somebody unmute your mic that has watched Chicken People and just make a comment about it. I want to hear one comment about it. We'll talk about it, but raise your hand or wave something if you have watched part of it or all of Chicken People so far. All right.
It was a very odd movie. I was not expecting what I watched, for sure.
Look, I think there's great documentaries that a lot of soc classes use, and then there's stuff that I find that that I think other people have seen too, but it's so awesome and unique, and that is good. That's what I want people to be like, I was going into it one way, and it took another turn. All right, great. Well, anybody else? I'll take one more comment about Chicken People. Anybody?
It was very interesting. Chicken were treated like children, but that's all I gotta say.
Well, we'll do a discussion probably next week on Thursday about it or whatever. But one thing to pay attention to is how pets or animals, or how this could be a mechanism for people to like heal, right? Like whether that's, we normally think of it in terms of like dogs or cats, but now that I'm out in the country and see like people's relationship with their horses and how smart horses are, like over the last few years, I've gotten more connected, but chickens too. So yeah, just look for that piece. Because I think that without chickens in their lives, some of these people would be maybe not even alive. This is what a weird thing to say, right? But yeah, all right, let's move on. So that's old stuff. You have to make sure you turn in the observation and make sure that you get on that discussion. There's no, I say at least a week ahead of time. So that's today, but you could go to the next discussion, check it out if you've got free time, whatever that is. It could be a couple weeks ahead of time, and that's fine with me as long as you post at least 1 week ahead of time. All right. And for Chicken People, if you haven't done that discussion yet, I don't have anything formal there. I just want people to write a few paragraphs about the reactions, right? I mean, we're jumping in with all sorts of intense stuff this semester and a lot of knowledge. And so some of the stuff that we're doing, I just, like these discussions, I just want them to be like how we're reacting to sociology. And we're doing the formal sociology. We're watching the videos, and I'm looking at those plays, and people are checking it out and everything. So awesome. Are the lectures somewhat painless? Are they a little not as boring maybe as you're used to? Okay, I like moving the monitor to answer yes, up and down. I'm down with that. Good job, Landon. I suppose I could do the same. Oh, sorry. Easily distracted. All right. So let's get to a few of our questions. Now, I do need to ask a question about the questions. We talked about how people describe society in one word, right? Correct? And then we also talked about how many people attend college, right? Out of 100. My question is, do we get to the what issues should we study as sociologists? Okay. So who is society functioning well for? We didn't get to that one, I don't think, did we? All right, so when I talk about who is society functioning well for, I'm referencing the three paradigms that we're talking about. And the three paradigms that we're talking about in chapter 1, those are like lenses or frameworks for seeing the world. And the ones that we're talking about are the structural functional paradigm and the conflict paradigm, and also symbolic interaction. And we also, I believe, have in there, and let me see, some gender theory and some race theory and things like that. So when I reference who is society functioning well for, we mean it from that term. Now, from a functionalist conflict, or from a functionalist perspective, and I'm just going to kind of run through these real quick, we know that that is kind of a framework or a lens for seeing society as stable and orderly. It's working, right? And how do we know that it's working? I don't know. You're attending a meeting for a class from a distance. Businesses are somewhat open. Planes aren't falling out of the sky. Zombies aren't on every. Look out your front door, make sure. But things are generally going along. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that they're functioning well for everyone or even a majority. So that's why we talk about conflict. And we talk about the conflict perspective. I just really want to stress one thing, and that is that I want you to be thinking of things in terms of not conflict like we are now, or in the streets or protesting necessarily, but in terms of inequality. Okay, that's the big term that I want you to sort of internalize when we talk about the conflict theory, is inequality. And then those are the big pictures, right? That's like society as a whole. What are these big trends, macro ideas? And then we get down to the micro ideas, and I did lecture about this, but just a refresher, and that would be the paradigm, the symbolic interaction or interactionist paradigm. Okay, so that's looking at family, your group of friends, and really a much more up close and personal sort of sociological view or look into what that means. Now, we're going to ask here, I think I already did, like, which one maybe appeals to you more or something like that. We'll get to that in a minute. But who is society functioning well for? We didn't do that question yet, I do not believe, do we? No. All right, so let me tell you, I'll look here and tell you the responses. Out of 82 responses, I think, or 39 responses, this is for the first one here. So women, 0, society's functioning well for. People of color, 0. The rich, 36 people responded. Everyone has the same opportunity too. And I threw in llamas down there at the bottom just because, and it seems that society is even functioning better for llamas than it would be, for people of color, for people who identify as a gender female. So why did you answer the way that you did? Because when we're talking about 36 to 0 to 0 to 1 to 2, that's really overwhelming. My other social class that has 250 people in it, it was 200 and some answered the rich, with 10 or 15 answering the others. So why, first of all, what did you choose and why? And it's really interesting because for us to get this kind of agreement is fairly rare. So right now, why did you answer the way that you answered? What do you think about that?
I answered the rich because the way our society is set up right now, the people who are in the position where they have the resources they need in order to thrive, not just get by, those people tend to be the rich, the 1%, even the people that maybe aren't quite in the 1%, but are higher up there, they have more resources, they have more opportunity to thrive than people who are not wealthy or who are, just marginally wealthy.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. And the social term that we'll use for that this semester basically is access, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody has differing amounts of access, different amounts of power, and the power that you have, that and a lot of that is established by, when the society, the culture is set up, who has that power, how is that transmitted, and access then, and then of course we'll look at privilege a lot too. But yeah, I think there's an interesting difference between having plenty, having enough, and then sort of struggling every single month or whatever cycle or whatever that pay thing might be, because obviously part of the struggle is an economic struggle as well, even though we refer to all sorts of other things. All right, other ideas why this might be small. Yeah, go ahead, Kendall.
I was just gonna say, sorry, not only like is it resources, but I feel like if you have money, there's like this underlying notion that like you're gonna get respect. Like rich people have a lot of respect too. So it's not just resources, but like people just in general respect richer people.
Yeah, and we could look at status, right? That's that status piece. How do we hold or see or look at people? And certainly, I think that we perceive that a lot of that is, or much of that is earned, and certainly people who are wealthy want that to look like the case, and indeed much of it is, and of course much of it is transmitted. Great deal of wealth in this culture has been transmitted from generation to generation to people, whereas where we look at certain categories, certain groups of people that we'll talk about this semester, there just hasn't been any chance to transmit wealth at all, or very little. Meaning, if you just started to be able to go to school in the 1960s with other folks because of the color of your skin or because of your gender, obviously that's that leads way different economic paths than if you had been allowed to do that for a long time. Access, the ability to own a home. I mean, for the longest of times, and still, there, redlining was a major practice, and that is just, you're not going to live here because banks are not going to give loans to people who live in these areas. And of course, we understand that that's poor areas, predominantly people of color. Now, if you haven't had a chance to accumulate wealth, then you have very little chance to transmit it to the next generation. So that's why we look at some of the numbers that we do. Now, all throughout the course of the semester, I guess it's important to know that as a sociologist, I wouldn't be all that concerned, even if it's important. Look, 5%, 10%, 20%, it doesn't have to be twice as much even to be statistically significant. But I still usually don't make too much of that. At a point at which your society might be 2 to 1 or 2 times more unequal, or whatever that is distribution, that's like tremendous right there. That's already huge. If you get to 5 to 1, 8 to 1, 10 to 1, then we know statistically it's very relevant. It's showing massive amounts of inequality. And also at that point, at a point at which you're like 10 times to something to 1 of somebody else, it has also become institutionalized and built into the system, right? So that inequality has been justified, and there are barriers then to prevent people from being able to move in that direction. And of course, less barriers in a class system like we have now than in a caste system, or things that we're going to look at later on down the line. Other thoughts as to why we answered this way? Society's functioning well. 0 votes out of this many people, 0 votes for women, 0 votes for people of color. What does that tell us, or what do you suppose, what can we infer from this data? Anybody?
I guess based on the data, we all realize that these 2 groups of people are struggling the most.
Yeah, certainly high on the list, and if not the most, but when classes identified, right, what they wanted to study and what were some discrimination or some paths to that, some barriers to that, gender discrimination, racial discrimination came up the most. And I think that, yeah, those 2 are ones that we're particularly looking at right now. All right, let's look at the next question. All right. Next question is, what inequalities, here's the one right here. What inequalities exist in our culture? Now, couple things. I'm okay with folks not writing a paragraph for Top Hat. If we were in class, you'd be getting like a minute, right? Because we just can't slow down class. So I'm okay with a little more detailed answer, but you don't have to write as much for this, certainly. I'm not requiring that. It can be pretty basic. So race and gender come up. Wealth inequality is a major issue. Racial inequalities, gender differences, social class, pay inequality between men and women, inequalities within the justice system for people of color, race and women's rights, race education. A lot of minority groups not treated equally in our culture, including LGBTQ, immigrants, and homeless people. Gender, sex, socioeconomic status, gender pay gap, homelessness, absolutely. Opportunities, what inequalities exist in our culture? Opportunities, good. Income and race, wealth and race. So we're getting a lot of, in addition to gender and race, we're getting a lot of wealth or income inequality and disparity, and we can look at that, and we will this semester. We know at what percentages, how fast that's growing. Good morning, Storm. That's my teenager. He's not impressed. All right. Education inequality, wage inequality, your starting point in life. Good. Pay gap between genders and races, systematic injustice. And in sociology, we call it institutionalized, right? So institutionalized racism or injustice. And by that, we mean it is, the rules of inequality are actually written out and built into the framework of the institutions that function in our society. An example of an institution would be the total institution. That is how sociologists refer to prisons in the prison network as the total institution. All right, gender, race, major inequalities between races, financial status, gender, and sexuality. All right, so we've got, I think, a lot of these that are identified that we've known about, that we talk about, and that I think these don't really surprise us necessarily. All right, so it looks like we did the heat signature. So remember, which group do you identify with more? That would be, did you see that one? That would be the one with the people partying at Tour de Fat, sort of a Fort Collins institution. Raise your hand if you've heard of Tour de Fat. All right, for the most part. That's basically a giant bicycle parade and party that's been going on in this town forever. And the parade would last like hours and hours and hours. I mean, miles and miles of people costumed in bikes. If you've never seen it, it's really an awesome thing. I do not think they're doing it this year, but they have, I think, planned some kind of alternative. We played last year, it was one of the bands that headlined that thing, and it's always super awesome. Anyway, fantastic. All right, so I'm not showing you this. I might take a screen capture and then show you this later, but, and I'm not sure if they might be Mormons. They might be the guys that are going door to door with the bicycles. Is that right? Is that what I'm thinking of? But they've got bike helmets. They've got ties, and their shirts are tucked in. And there's quite a few people that identified in our class with that by heat signature. So it's like green, and then if it's more frequent, it's red. I'll take a screenshot, like I said, and show you. But far more people identified with the group of people on the right, including people half naked, riding bikes, and dressed in costumes. So why did you pick group A? Because both of them have bikes, right? I mean, if you're into biking or bike safety or whatever that might be, like, that's a common thread through here. But I'm not so sure that's why people chose A or B, the guys in the ties with the bike helmets or the Tour de Fat kind of party college students. So what did you choose as far as who you identify with more and why? And there's some great answers for this.
So I chose the Tour de Fat people, and I'm not a partier, but it was mainly just because it seemed like such a more accepting and open and fun-loving group, whereas the other one seemed very like stiff and formal and buttoned up, and that is just not me at all.
All right, cool. Different between, it just looked too formal, and the other looked more open. All right, what else? Who else? Why did you choose what you chose? And don't be, not, okay, so sociologically, we're going to answer a lot of ways this semester. But as a sociologist, I'm always way more interested in, like, if 100 people vote one way and 5 vote the other way, I'm immediately interested in the 5, right? Because to me, that's what is going on there? So even if you're voting or you're choosing something that is not the highest percentage, I want to know why. Because there's always some great reasons why people identify in this picture with the group on the left, with the guys with the ties too. So what do you think? Either group, why did you pick that group and why?
I voted group B too, kind of adding on with that. It just looked a lot more fun to me for some reason. And it was like, if you could see yourself in which group, which one would you be? And usually when I ride my bike, I'm with a lot of people. So that's just kind of the group I saw myself in.
Awesome. Good, good. Anybody choose group A, the group on the left, and why? Because to me, that's always really, like I said, really interesting.
I chose the other one, the conservative group, because the other group reminded me of a group I knew in high school, and I just didn't really appreciate their values or the way they treated people who didn't agree with them.
Yeah.
So I kind of went with the other side.
Okay. And so that's like part of what we're doing with that sociological observation, right? I mean, immediately when we see someone as a human being in a social context, we assume to know all sorts of things about them. We make all sorts of judgments, and we have all sorts of framework for that, right? I mean, somebody wearing a suit and tie does look a lot different than somebody wearing a gumball machine in front of their crotch. And I think that's what that guy was wearing in that one picture. So yeah, just the way that people are dressed might signify to us what we think, we don't know for sure, right? But what we think their values might be, which is in a way how we get connected to people. I mean, if you can think about if you're standing in a group of people, I don't know, like a big, well, okay, we're not standing in groups of people anymore. Let me back it up. Back when we used to stand in groups of people, back in 2019, sorry, you know, like if orientation or something like that, like how do you gravitate to the first group of friends that you meet in college? Is it because you're the people sitting off to the side? You know, kind of like, I'm sort of skeptical of this whole meet and greet thing. Are you somebody that's kind of right in the middle, mixing with people, right? Like, so, yeah, and are you drawn to people because they have t-shirts with slogans or companies you support or bands that you like? I mean, it's like, how do we start these relationships? Because a lot of times you're going to college and you're rebooting your whole friend group. I mean, yeah, I have some friends from high school, but the reality is the friends over the last 20 years from college on, those are the people that I have had as friends for 20 years. And so it's like now there is a whole nother thing that is going to be this major part that's just starting. That's like, okay, how do I look at people, judge them, and decide that we might be friends or we're definitely not? Right? That is also easy oftentimes for us as human beings to be like, yep, no, nope, not at all, yep, right? Okay, good. Let me look at the next question. Okay. All right, so now we have a couple questions, and I did not release today's Top Hat questions yet. I do not think, correct? Yeah. I just woke up and got my coffee, so I'll get to that, and then I'll make sure they're open till 6 or 7. Maybe I'll extend it a little bit, you know, because I'm going to be doing it after class, but that's probably going to happen most days. I need to get up and get into it unless I'm getting up super early. Maybe we'll see. But this is basically to review. The symbolic interaction approach focuses on how people experience society, the parts of society work together, the parts of society differ, or the big picture. And of course, symbolic interaction is not the big picture, it's people, how people experience society. How the parts of society work together, that's functionalist, right? That's like, it's functioning, it's working, that kind of thing. And of course, like I said, we know that functionalist theory, it's just one perspective to go with, does not mean that things are functioning well for a lot of people, but that's just one way to see things. All right. The chief characteristic of blank approach views society as stable and orderly and stable. Yes, most people got that. That's the structural functionalist. And last, the approach that views society as an arena of inequality that generates change is the conflict perspective. Good. Look, that's definitely going to be in different ways in the things you're writing about. It's going to be on the first exam. And forget all that. As far as grasping sociology, one of the reasons that we want to know these three paradigms is because all three of them we can use, right? Look at the big picture, look at the small picture, look at things through inequality. How are things working? And like if I'm an inequality person, which I am, like I tend to gravitate towards what is fair, what is unequal, what is equal, how can we change that? That's just me. That being said, I have to recognize that there's some things that are functioning well for a lot of people in society. Maybe that's not healthcare, but maybe it's something else. And what is that? So when we're looking at these, I encourage you, even if you're drawn to one, and a lot of times people are for sure, that we make sure just to, you know, that those three are floating around. And those are the things that we make social science behavioral observations through, right? Like that's the lens through which now we know we're doing soc. We're not just observing people, we're applying theory. And once you're into applying theory territory, we're into social and behavioral science territory, which is awesome, because as much as we can infer things ourselves and be good people watchers, you want to back that up, right? We want to back that up. If we're going to say, I feel like this is happening because of this, then we also want to make sure that we've got statistical evidence so that when we show that, you know, it's scientific and it makes sense. Hey, that's Huckle. How's it going, Huckle? He's a good boy. All right. So my question to you then is, which one of these paradigms or these like lenses, who wears glasses here or contacts? Raise your hand. You know when you're getting that test, better one, better two, better one, better two. And they've got the thing in front of your face. And after a while, you're positive that they're just messing with you, right? Better. You're like, that hasn't changed. That you're now, come on now. And that's actually how they do it too. They do. The last ones, and several of them throughout the course of it are placebos or whatever. They're not actual things because they're trying to figure out, you know, closer and closer. Anyway, if you've ever done that, that's kind of what this is. So which one of these perspectives appeals to you or don't you like? Like which one of them is interesting to you? Which one do you think misses something? Anybody? I know we're talking about theoretical paradigms, but even that conversation can be interesting in sociology, I think. Which one do you gravitate towards more? What do you think? It's good to see you all this morning, by the way, too.
I think I gravitate more toward the conflict. I believe that we're not free until everyone is free. So I think focusing on the areas where the inequality exists that's the most interesting thing to me as far as making concrete change in society.
I'll ask that question this semester to you, to everybody in a couple class periods. And the question is simply, are you free? And then the follow-up is how, or to do what, and in what ways? So something for us to think about. Another question I'll ask you this semester that's good to think about ahead of time. How much power do you have? What does that mean, right? How much power do you have yourself? How much power do you have in relationship to me, your teacher, in relationship to people in the community, in relationship to the president of the college, that kind of thing. So yeah, good. All right, so which one of these conflict is appealing to you? Which one of these paradigms did you find interesting, or do you have a question about? I'm fine with clarifying something as well, but to me, they're each so different.
I like the functionalist approach because it focuses on like solidarity and like trying to work together. I don't know. I just like that one the best because it's like working for the problem.
Good. All right. And who's next? Anybody?
I also did the conflict approach. Just because one thing that was said was like there's inequality at the detriment of some while others gain. And I see, like, I can kind of see that a lot in like the like wealth gap and everything. So I guess that's just how I applied it.
Yeah, when I look at stratification, it's still like, that's why I love Soc. It's still, I'm like, wow, you can knowingly, consciously build in inequality that benefits some while purposefully hurting others, and that's okay. Like from certain perspectives and for certain individuals and in certain societies, right? That's okay for all sorts of folks. So it's interesting to me, like I said, that one piece that we look at all semester long about how society is always in a state of change and how we are not stagnant, right? There's always change no matter what. And I'm not sure how many people here are comfortable with change. Raise your hand if you love change, because some people are like, bring on the change. I'm not, nobody really wants to bring on the change at 8:32 in the morning. Okay. I got to remember that I'm asking these questions at 8:30. Who wants to march? I need my coffee first. All right, I get that. Good. Okay, so it's like, yeah, some people are like, bring on that change. I want to do something different. Some people are like, look, let's just be real. Change freaks me out, and I'd like to ride whatever thing we're doing right now because that's comfortable. And then some of us are very much in the middle. And I do believe that some of those kind of perspectives that we have ourselves end up being things that match these sociological paradigms. All right, good. I think that's it for the questions that I had laid out. Now, I'd love some questions from you. We're wrapping up week 2. Is that possible? Does this seem like 2 weeks just went fast to you?
Time like doesn't exist here, I swear. It's like 1 minute I'm up and then the next I'm complaining about what I'm gonna do for dinner. It's crazy.
I have been on the farm for so long, like since March, and with the boys and being pretty responsible. Yesterday, it was a ginormous decision for me to actually drive. I can't remember where we drove to play basketball, the boys and I, or something like that. And I just realized, I'm like, man, I'm not even as used to driving. Like I get in a car and it's like, I don't even mind taking my kid to cross country practice. Last year I was like, I'm driving all the time, I hate this. And I'm like, hey, you got to go to a practice or something? You want to do something? Hey, should we drive around town? Should we go cruising? Oh, shoot. All right, what questions do you have about class? You should definitely be on chapter 2 by now, because the first content assignment is due next week, and I'll talk more about the upcoming exam. Again, that's beyond. That's the week after that, so that's fine, but it is going to cover chapters 1, 2, and 3. The chapter 3 on culture, I really want to get into next week because I love that chapter. So I'm going to, send a lot of questions out there. And that brings me to another thing. I was almost going to say I was going to fire a lot of questions out there, but I don't do that. So when students say, can I shoot you an email? And I know it makes me a jerk. I'm always like, just send me one. And that's really important because we don't think about violent language, but we do have a very violent culture. So, I mean, when students tell me what other students say, like that they say about tests, like really crazy vulgar things, or I killed that, or people come up to us after our band plays, you killed that. And I try not to be a jerk. I'm just like, thanks. But one of the things that we need to pay attention to is, and we'll talk about this semester, language, and how important language is, and how unconscious we are of kind of the things, the language that we use and what that means. So instead of saying I'm going to fire off a bunch of questions, I will say what I stuck with the first time, which is I'll open up a bunch of questions and send them to you in the most peaceful and loving of ways for you to answer. I'll do that right when I get off here, and then I'll go out into the garden. Anybody have anything? Do we actually need to get Top Hat? We will have Top Hat questions right after class. If you want a 5%, 4%, or 3% or 2% boost to your grade at the end without having to send an email asking for a boost to your grade at the end, that is why I build it in. So yeah, it's participation points. If you jump on Top Hat this week and next week, and it's the first time you're doing it, you still have plenty of time all semester long to answer questions and benefit from it. And if you don't, bless you, or non-denominationally bless you. Yeah, I saw somebody sneeze. Oh, shoot. All right. Anything else before I go release the Top Hat questions?
Should we have chapter 3 like read by before our exam?
Well, I mean, since I think there's at least 1 or 2 culture questions, not culture club, the band, but culture questions. I know. Bad jokes. If that's due next Friday, I would read it by Monday or Tuesday so that you have a couple days to write out the couple essays. Then you've read all the chapters by the 11th. And when is the exam? Yua, do you know? It's not in front of me right here. It's in announcements. Does anybody know? Let me see. Who can get it first? Let me see. Exam dates will not move.
It's on the 18th.
Okay. So that's, what is that, next Friday? Or no? Yeah, the following Friday or whatever. Yeah, I'm going to open it up. I'll open it up for like 24 hours, okay? At least. I might open it up for a little longer the first time just so that people in their lives can get to it. I don't want anybody to miss it or not be able to take it. At the end of the semester, if you miss taking one exam, and there's not a replace, but if you miss taking one exam, you can go online and make up one of those. Like if something drastic happens, otherwise having it open for 24 hours, you should be able to manage that, hopefully from just about anywhere you are in the world or whatever. Any other questions?
I was just wondering, like, what do you expect for the replies to like the chicken people discussion?
Yeah, just a casual discussion. I mean, everybody here is probably a, media specialist. on responding and replying to friends, whether that's through text or whatever. You could say that's a really interesting perspective. I feel this way, or I don't know, I kind of see it the other way. I disagree with that, or how weird was that? Yes. Or, you know, the replies don't have to be super, super detailed, but I just like that, you know, if somebody says something interesting on the discussion thread, that you chime in briefly. Your most detailed post should always be the first post, which always should be at least a couple paragraphs long, you know, and detailed. That being
You
said,
have like an amount that we have to like reply to, like you have to reply to like 3 people, or like,
yeah,
is
go
it
to the
just however you
discussion
want?
board and check
Okay.
that out.
Okay.
Yeah, minimum of 3 posts total, 1 a week in advance and 2. But I think you'll get many, like more than 2 replies would be easy. And here's the deal. Okay, I think there was a Simpson. Raise your hand if you're a Simpsons, if you ever like watch the Simpsons or anything like that. Anyway, early on, they were pretty good. And Homer was like, he said to Bart, just do it the American way. Show up every single day and do a half-ass job. Right? So I'd like to avoid that and suggest this, that if you got to reply 2 times extra, like after your first post, throw in 3. If you have to write this major paper, do not do, if it says 2 pages for a section, don't do 1.5. Do 2 and a paragraph, right? Because the deal is, and I've been teaching for 13 years, most people will do slightly less than required, but you can really stand out in this world if you do slightly more than what people are asking for. You dig it? You know what I'm saying? Like that is a true way to success, because so many people do less than. So I don't always think that we're in competition with people, nor do I think this class is a competition. Everybody's going to succeed in here based upon your resources and how good I can teach and help you as well. That being said, do a little extra. It never hurts. I try and tell that to my kids with chores. They don't believe that yet. I'm still trying. Oh, just between you and me. We'll see what I can motivate them to do. All right. So I put enough money to get the top hat description. It's behind now. Can I turn in everything? Yes. Why don't you email me and I will reply to that email. Yeah, sorry about that. Email me and I'll get back to you about that. No worries. And if you need anything, just reach out. I will be working, I guess. Oh, and I don't know if I said this to this class, but I was answering so many emails over the last weekend, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I love you all dearly. You're my favorite people in the world. And then also, I'm probably not going to do that from now on, from Friday afternoon to Monday morning, just as a way for me to be able to get a little bit of a break. So unless it's, you know, really, really, really important, yeah, I'll be sort of gone for the weekends. I'm not ghosting you, as Storm would say. But I am going to disappear a little. I love how many eyes roll. I love it. I'm going to actually, my specialty is using terms that I'm supposed to be way too old to use in ways that aren't exactly correct. I'm kind of an expert at that. So I'll make sure to do that this semester for you lots and keep you smiling. Anything else before we're done here?
Oh, I do have a question.
Yes, Gabby.
So I am a little confused about the content assignment because I know it's supposed to be an essay format.
Yes, please.
But there's like 5 different questions.
Good.
So
Let me clarify.
I'm not sure how to write it.
Yep. So I would just number 1 and put the number 1 there. Instead of writing like 4 essays or 5 essays that bleed into each other like one big long paper, save that for the big long paper, because as we're grading, it really helps to see number 1 and then half a page of writing or whatever that is. Number 2 and then that, because it allows us, imagine the grading that we're doing, right? I mean, Verena and Ewa are whew, there's a lot of grading, a lot of reading. So number 1 and then a couple paragraphs, you know, maybe a half a page single spaced, maybe 3/4 of a page. What I'm asking you to do, okay, I understand that people want, and the more I teach, the more students, as every day passes, people want like down to the letter, down to the word. But I also want you to be free to answer a question in a complete way, in a detailed way. And I know if it's 2 or 3 sentences long, that's not detailed and complete, right? But I don't need you to write a paper for each one of the questions. So number 1, a good size, 2, 3 paragraphs, with in-text citations. The next, number 2, answer that. Now, also put some personal insight in there. It not only relates to sociology and your experiences, which are infinitely, well, they're infinite in what you've experienced and they're very interesting, but as you're writing an essay, it takes up space. It takes up a little more space and it makes your essay stronger. You've got in-text stuff, you talk about and reference the book, and then you chime in with maybe your own perspective or experience. So it doesn't matter whether it's first person, third person to me. They're formal in that they have cited in-text citations. They can be informal in that this is sociology. What's your take on this? You know, it wouldn't be interesting if I'm just asking you to regurgitate paradigms and other people's perspectives when you're a human being that is not only diverse and wonderful and amazing, but has had different experiences than the people in the boxes to the left and to the right of you and above you. So anyway, does that make sense, Gabby?
Yeah, that was super helpful. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Anything else?
Yeah, I was just wondering, you said that we could see what your requirements for the discussion posts are on the discussion board. Where would that be at?
So I do believe under discussions, there's something that should say what I expect from discussions up above. Let me see. Taking my computer a second to get to that page. Introduction. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, let me, I don't know why that's not there. That's interesting. I do have a piece. Yeah, good call. I do have a piece that says what I expect from discussions. So I'll go ahead and copy and paste that into announcements. That for some.
No, I'm gonna have the blueberry green tea, please.
Thank you.
Yes. James would also like one, and I would like the mocha frappamino with a whole bunch of chocolate chino on it. I don't know. Is that something?
I'll take one as well.
Brendan, thank you. That was awesome. Nope, I think we should end that way. That's perfect for today. It's good to see your smiles. I'm getting used to the different students that I have in this class. Are you enjoying class? Is this a good class for you? All right, I'm gonna keep working hard to make it that way. I will upload this. I'll upload the top hat questions and I will clarify some discussion business on the announcements page. So be good people and do good things. Ooh, I don't want to throw my back out too early. Take care, everybody. Peace. We're out.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.